One tablet runs Android and another runs iOS. And the ones that Walmart sells you cost impossibly less. Go ask Google as it rules the world. Hello and welcome to the Homeless Consultants channel. My name is Paul B. I am the Homeless Consultant. And today I want to talk about purchasing an Android tablet, specifically an ONN tablet from Walmart. Some people may pronounce it ONN. I pronounce it ONN, have no idea how to pronounce it. The thing is, as I looked into buying a tablet and I purchased the tablet, you know, kind of like when I bought the cordless fan. I did the video recently on buying a cordless fan, and sometimes when you look at the reviews on these things, they're not telling you the whole story. So I thought I would do my own review of sorts of the Walmart ONN tablet that I bought, so that if people are shopping for these tablets, you will not just get the technical specs and benchmarks that you would get from other people. Instead, you're going to get the information that's really, truly relevant here. And so to get started, you know, being stuck in this car, I've got this computer here and it barely fits, especially with the keyboard sticking out. Living in this car, it's really hard to have this tablet in here, or tablet, to have this laptop in here. A lot of what I'm doing is just research anyway, so I'm just watching videos or I'm reading text files, I'm taking notes, doing things like that. I don't need a full-on laptop necessarily. You know, I need this for number crunching and making the videos. So I thought, well, I'm going to get a tablet. And there was another reason too. There were some apps for my, you know, music when it comes to guitar and keyboard and things like that. That only run on, you know, tablets. They don't run on a PC. So I had bought, when I first became homeless about 6 years ago, one of the first things I did was get a tablet because, you know, I lost everything. I sold everything off and I just got, it was just a cheap little thing. It was like $49, right, at Best Buy. And the glass cracked on it probably within about a month or so. And I bought another one, I don't know, maybe a year later. And this one was, I think, an inch bigger. Instead of a 7-inch, it was an 8-inch. And on that one, about 4 to 6 weeks later, the glass cracked on it. So, you know, I spent all this time getting it up and running, and, you know, I got some use out of it. It was, in fact, very useful to have something small like that. And but the glass kept cracking on it. It was just a total waste of money. Just a money pit. And I thought, well, this time around I'm going to have to get another one, but I'm going to, you know, take some extra steps to protect it. It wasn't like I was abusing the thing, but again, when you live in a car, like I've said all along, all my cables get bunched up and they short out all the time, so I have to replace those. That's part of the reason why I say it's more expensive to live in this car than it was to live in my home. There's expenses out the wazoo here, things that you just don't experience when you live in the comfort of your own home, but I have to deal with all the time. And part of that is that just about anything you buy is going to break much quicker in here. So anyway, I needed a tablet. I really did. It's going to take a huge load off of this thing, let me, you know, be more productive, and it's going to consume less energy, which is going to put less, you know, less of a burden on the car, which right now is what's recharging this big thing. So, you know, just like anything else, when you go out to buy something new, I had to research what was going on with tablets, because it's been a good 4 years or so since I bought that last one. Those two that I bought before were Insignia tablets from Best Buy, the ones where the glass just for no good reason. It's just sitting in my car and I come out and I was, what? And total cracked and unusable. So this time around I went looking and shopping, and I don't want to get too bogged down in the process of shopping this time, you know, but, you know, the first things first, there's no possible way I was going to go iOS. I will not do Apple anything. Apple is, I mean, as you're going to see, these tech companies are just evil to begin with, but Apple is a whole nother circle of hell. I will not touch Apple. So that was just out. That was just out from the beginning. It's not to say that their products aren't good or that they're not. Sounds like the Red Baron's up there. It's not that Apple products aren't good and that they don't get the job done and all that. It's that the company I can't, with any kind of a conscience at all, support. And frankly, Google's pretty much the same way. If I didn't know what I did about computers to be able to get around some of it, I wouldn't support Google in any way either. So, as I was looking for tablets, I basically, let's just cut to the chase here. You know, I looked at Best Buy, I looked at Micro Center and all that. At the little price point where I just want to get the cheapest one they make, you know, you have Digiland, maybe Insignia still from Best Buy. You have at Micro Center Lenovo, and I think Hyundai, if I remember right, which I thought they made cars. And then Samsung is probably the entry level for most people. Although the Samsungs cost, you know, 50% or twice as much as these cheap tablets. I didn't have a choice. I didn't want to spend a lot of money on this. I just wanted something I could use to take some of the burden off this computer for watching media. So basically using it as a media player and those apps for guitar, you know, that help you train on guitar and things like that. So I went to Walmart. And again, I'm not big on supporting Walmart at all, but, you know, I mean, you got to be realistic of, you know, what I have access to. So when I went to Walmart, what I found was the tablets. Their house brand tablet is called ONN, or I hear people pronouncing it ONN. It's one of the weirdest brand names I have ever seen anyone come up with. I don't know what they're going for there. Although backwards it says no. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. If you look at what you had to choose from here, you had for $49 a 7-inch quad-core tablet with 32 gigabytes. $49. Okay, now that's essentially exactly the same thing I got from this Insignia 4 or 5 years ago. It was $49, as I recall. It was 7 inches, it was a dual core, that was the main difference, and it probably had 16 gigabyte back then. Now, you jump up just a little bit, up into the $76, $79 range, and all of a sudden you can get an 8-inch, which is significant. One more inch on that, you know, diagonal, gives you a lot more surface area, and for, you know, my eyes and stuff, that's a good thing. One of them is a quad core, the other is an octa core. Then jumping up to the 10-inch, you add 2 inches diagonal, and it gets even bigger, much easier to see. And you're still only at about $105. Look at that, $136 for a 10-inch octa core with the 32 gigabyte, and then $159. So this is the most expensive of this whole series. $159 for a 10-inch octa core with 64 gigabytes. So for $160, you can get a tablet that has 64 gigabytes, the biggest screen, effectively, that you're going to find, and an octa-core. Alright? So the first decision was, which one do I get? Let me tell you something, folks. The difference between quad-core and octa-core. You know, a single core back in the 8086 days in the 1980s and everything, when they had MS-DOS and Windows was starting, what a microchip has, a microprocessor, you know, it's a square, you see all the lines coming off of it and everything. It contains certain things. It contains memory and registers, it contains an arithmetic logic unit and things like that. It's basically the chip that does the actual processing and number crunching. It will probably, at least these days, have some kind of a simple graphics card built into it. Not really a card, but, you know, a graphics unit. GLU. Sorry, just a moment. I forget what they call these things, the graphics. Is it GLU? I don't know. I've been out of this for many years. But it's going to have all these functions that allow you to just get your job done. So what happened was, oh, I don't know how long ago it was, 15 years, 20 years ago maybe, they came out, well, no more than that, because my other computer, they came out with what they call dual core. So what is a dual core? Well, if you have a microprocessor that has everything a microprocessor does, and it interfaces with the things on your motherboard, a dual core means that inside that chip there's actually two chips. So in theory you get twice the power, right? And later on they came out with quad core. So you have this chip, and basically you could divide it by 4, and it's like having one of those chips next to each other, like there's 4 of them. Well, you know, if you think in the real world, if you keep using this analogy between computers and humans, which isn't a very good analogy, you've got something like this. Let's say you have an encryption problem. So you have a word that you captured from, you know, Iran, about their nuclear weapon that they want to use to destroy the United States and Israel with. And you've got this word, and it's very urgent that you decode it. Well, how do you do that? If it's just a straight substitution, in other words, you have to use a code book to look up each letter and see what the real letter is, and then when you put it together you can read it. You can hand that word to one person. Okay, that's like one processor. That one person then has to look at the first letter, go to the code book, see what the real letter, the substitution letter is, and write it down. Then they go to the next letter and they write it down. And then they go to the next letter and they write it down. Now, if you have a whole encoded message, you know, a whole sentence, for one person going back and forth, they can do it and they can just chug along at it, but it's going to take a while. It might be 10, 15 minutes before they get that whole thing decoded. Now, what if you have a room that has a whole bunch of people in there? Okay, well, just more people. They have 2 people, or they have 4 people, or they have 8 people. Now you take these letters and you parcel them out. You take the first, if you have 4 people working on it, you take the first 1/4 of the sentence and you give it to the first person. You take the second one, you give it to the second person, etc. And then they sit down and they do the same decoding, but they're only having to do it for 1/4 the number of characters. And at the time that they're done with that, the other people are done with their portion. Then it goes into one processor who takes everything they have and they string it together and they read it. Oh, Iran just sent a nuclear bomb to Venezuela which can reach the United States. Okay, now we understand. Which is going to be a topic of another one of my videos in the future, by the way. You might want to look for that one. Since the state of Minnesota decided to elect somebody who's as president of the United States who is going to allow this to happen. Okay, so the question is it worth getting an octa-core? Based on what I just told you, of course it is. This is much more efficient. It's much faster, right? Here's the problem, though. Just like everything in marketing, you can't believe what you're saying or what you're hearing. When they advertise a quad-core or an octa-core at this point, now the quad-core seems to be fairly legit. 4 cores that parcel out every function of the microprocessor, do it simultaneously, and that speeds things up versus 1 core, 1 processor. The octa-core, however, seems to be a different animal. The octa-core with these things is 8 cores, so it's equivalent to having 8 people decoding this statement this encrypted statement that you have. But basically what it is it's kind of comparable to if you take the statement and you break it up into, again, only 4 pieces, even though you have 8 people. You break it up into 4 pieces and you give it to the slowest 4 people you have. You know, you give it to those guys. And they're sitting there, you know, just writing it out and digging for gold, and they're just taking their sweet time getting it done. As they finally get it done, it might take them a half hour, 45 minutes to do it. As they start getting it done and the supervisor's walking around the back and he looks at this and he starts seeing words like, you know, atomic, bomb, Venezuela. He starts seeing these kinds of things. Well, he's going to think to himself, you know what, this might be an urgent message. He grabs those things and he gives them to the other 4 people who are fast. And the other 4 people, they get it all done, and all of a sudden, in 5 minutes, you've got the whole thing decoded. after you wasted 20 or 30 minutes on these slow people. Okay, now there's 8 people there, but it wasn't faster than having 4. In fact, it probably wasn't even faster than having 1. That's what an octa-core is in a tablet. Okay, it basically starts out with the slow processors, and the reason is because a slow processor is going to save energy. It's going to extend the battery life. If the thing needs more power, it starts to parcel it out to the more powerful cores. Okay, so again, it's not a perfect analogy, but hopefully you see what I'm talking about. When they advertise octa-core, you can't just say to myself, well, this is going to be twice as fast, it's got an octa-core in it. No, it's how the cores are used. So when it came to me purchasing one of these, knowing that, I did not feel like I had to get an octa-core at all. In fact, I probably didn't want one. It's probably going to be less efficient. It could end up actually burning your battery out faster, or draining your battery faster. And by the way, as far as the memory goes here, if you look at the ones at Walmart, all of them are 32 gigabyte internal, except for that last one, that big 10-inch octa-core. It has 64 gigabytes. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, so I didn't know how to gauge that. You know, again, I haven't really used tablets in my time. And that's actually memory where the apps are stored. It's like a hard drive in there. So if you're going to download a whole lot of apps, you, in theory, could fill that up, you know, relatively quickly. I can tell already I'm perfectly fine with 32 gigabyte. I'm just not doing much with it. So once I realized I wanted a quad core, what I did was I went to Walmart, and Walmart's a scary place. And I'm here in Minnesota. Minnesota, the state, in fact, the very location that brought you Ilhan Omar in Washington, D.C. Somebody who hates the United States of America and for some reason wants to be in a position of power to control the country that she hates so much. You might want to think about what that could possibly mean, folks. So in this area, this is where they brought in all of those Somalis, right? So when you go to Walmart, basically the employees are almost all Somalis in many of these Walmarts. And they walk around with things like, they got their burqa on and they have a cell phone jammed in their burqa against their head. This is not the most brilliant group of people in the world. I mean, if you want brain cancer, that's probably the quickest and easiest, cheapest way to get it. Not the smartest moves in the world. When you're going there to Walmart and you're trying to get help from these people, that's what you get. You get chewing gum with their mouth open, a phone stuck in their burqa while they're on the clock working. And then they look at you with absolute contempt if you have the audacity to come over and ask them a question. It's like, how dare you? How dare you interrupt my phone call? I'm on the job here at Walmart. So I wasn't really looking forward to this because the tablets are kept behind glass. You have to go have someone go unlock it. In my experience, when you want to do that here anyway, I mean, I've been to other Walmarts around the country and they're much, 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 much better. But here, that can become a 20-minute ordeal just to find somebody who finally stops chewing gum long enough to go over and open the cabinet. And then you can start shopping. Well, in this case, I got really lucky. I got this older gentleman, just a real sweetheart of an old man. He went right over and opened it up. He was very patient and answered my questions, let me test out the demos. And I ended up getting the 8-inch quad-core 32 gigabyte. Now, at the same time, I bought the folio for it. They have the ONN folio. It was about $10. And one thing that's always amazed me with these tablets, given how fragile the glass is how thin and fragile these folios are. The folios are neat because you open them up and you can set them so they stand, and they have all these different orientations. You can, have it portrait or landscape. But they're so thin, it's like no wonder the glass keeps breaking on these things. There's no padding. And in fact, even on the inside of these folios, there's not like a soft, fabric or something that won't scratch the glass. It's just whatever it is. And but I got the folio. I knew I was going to have to do something else to help protect it. The first thing I would say about these is when you get a new tablet, no matter what it is, any electronic device like that with a rechargeable battery, charge the battery fully before you even turn it on. that first charge is very important to how well the battery will perform throughout the life of the device. So make sure that you charge it up fully. In my case, it actually, when I plugged it in, it was basically at 100% already, which was nice. So I let it go a little bit, just to make sure that it was in fact at 100%, and then I could use it almost right away. Now, my first impression, again, it's been 4 years since I used a tablet, and my only experience using tablets were those 2 times I got to use it for about a month before they broke. At that time, I did find them very useful. It was Android, and it was a lot like my PC. And I know my PC, Windows stuff, I know that really, really well. I know how to dig around at low levels and get things done. The Android wasn't quite that, but at least in terms of file management and everything, it was very similar. So I knew how to move things around and get them organized. And the file manager, everything just seemed very similar to Windows, and it was pretty cool. This time, though, 4 or so years later, with this ONN tablet, I was pretty horrified by what happened when I hit the power button. First of all, the boot time on this thing is ridiculous. It takes quite a while. It takes maybe 30 to 45 seconds for it to boot up, maybe more, which for a little tablet with a little operating system is pretty rough. It's okay, it's not a deal breaker, but I mean, it's not exactly plug and play, right? But when it first came up, it had one screen after another forcing you, and I don't like being forced. I don't like being forced. When people put a gun to you and say do this, or the government says you will do this or else, that's not the way a free society should work, and that's not the way a dignified human being should be functioning. Every screen on here was forcing me to either return the tablet or to agree to, Google's terms of service for this particular function and their privacy policy for this particular function. Over and over and over again. I agree to these terms. I agree to this privacy policy. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? I have never in my life had an operating system where this thing, in the first few minutes of where I was setting this up, I knew what was going on there, because I know the history of this. I studied computer science. Every single one of those screens was attempting to legally protect Google. But you got to ask the question, what are they being protected from? Why didn't they need that back 4 years ago when I just turned on the tablet and there it is, basically a file system I can use? What are they protecting themselves from, folks? Well, it's pretty obvious what they're protecting themselves from. What this tablet actually turned out to be from Walmart is what I would call a Google ecosystem. This isn't a tablet. This isn't a product that gives you functionality of like a mini PC where you can go out and do the things that you need to do productively. This thing is literally a Google ecosystem. Every app in there was Google. They're all tied together. In order to get an app from their online store, you have to log in with a Google account. But once you log in, you can't log out again. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And this is horrifying if you understand what Google is and what they do. So I was not happy about this at all. And if I was not stuck in this car, I would have taken that thing back in a heartbeat. Fortunately, I mean, I'm basically using this as a media viewer, but I do not like... See, when... Have you ever had someone who you talk to, let's say somebody who you're a little suspicious of, you're kind of like, I don't really trust this person, I think they're trying to scam me. And as you talk to them, they just keep saying things like, well, honestly, man, I mean, truly, honestly, I just want you to know, I'm a very honest person, and I want to let you know, honestly, this is a great car. This is a great car. It's going to serve you real well, or something like that. When you have somebody who keeps repeatedly saying honestly and telling you that they're an honest and a good person, doesn't that raise red flags way up high in the sky? What normal person feels the need to constantly tell you that they're honest, unless maybe they're dishonest? What company needs to repeatedly give you a privacy policy? You see, this has been going on from the beginning with computers. The purpose of a privacy policy is not to provide you with privacy. It is to legally cover their butt as they invade your privacy. That's the whole point of a privacy policy. Okay, your privacy is being invaded in ways that are, I mean, it's a violation akin to rape when you consider how important your personal information is in the information age. But most people have no idea it's even happening. These privacy policies in here are forcing you to hit accept, which means I accept Google invading my privacy every which way to Sunday, while they put up this cheap facade that keeps saying, we're protecting your privacy, we're protecting your privacy. I'm a really honest person. Honestly, I wouldn't lie to you. The reason the privacy policy is always there over and over and over again is because they are invading your privacy. And every time you click on that, you just lost a legal right to stop them from invading your privacy. So I hope you know that when you're using these things. Because most people seem to be using these tablets for something a lot more extensive than what I do as just a media player. They're living their lives on these tablets. But we'll look at that a little more in a bit. Once you log into Google there, you can't get out of it. You can't log out anymore. That's insane. What is the good of a device if the day you buy it, you log into an account and you can never log out of it ever again? That's craziness. That is being locked against your will into an ecosystem. In this case, the Google one. And Google is a very bad, evil company. You remember when Google first came out and they had that unofficial slogan, "Don't be evil." You see, again, when someone keeps telling you the obvious, I don't like being evil, so I live that way. I don't go out and everybody I meet, "Hi, I'm not evil. My name's Paul." I don't do that. I don't feel the need to do that. Only somebody who plans to be evil is going to feel it on their mind, I better set these guys at ease. I don't want them to know that I'm evil, so I'm going to tell them that I'm not evil. And when Google first started, "Don't be evil," you could tell right away that Google was headed in that direction just from that. All you had to do was think about it. It wasn't some clever little Silicon Valley slogan. There's a reason they do things like that. Now, if you add a second Google account, like a second email or whatever, that is forever associated with the first one. And I'm not going to go into great details. I want to badly, but I'm not going to go into great details of how information is gathered and collated and stored and parsed, and how these algorithms and artificial intelligence algorithms are run on this to learn more about you than you know about yourself, which is the definition of power in the information age. 2,000 years ago, if you were a tribe of people, maybe Germanic tribe, up there just living your lives and having a good time, you're in agriculture, you just got your families, your kids are running around, you have a village, all the people know each other, you have your little spat with this neighbor, every once in a while another tribe comes up and you go to war for a bit and then it's over, and you're just living your life. And then one day you get up in the morning and you just hear these footsteps coming and you don't know what it is. That's the Roman Empire, folks. And the Roman Empire isn't a neighboring tribe. They're going to come in there with weapons that are beyond anything you could ever imagine. Strategies and tactics. They know how to work together. It's called conspiracy when people do that, by the way. Like an army would. It's called a conspiracy. All these, the phalanx and, with their swords and their shields, they know, and their arrows, their flaming arrows. The Roman army is a totally different thing than you've ever encountered before. And you might think you know how to go about life and deal with potential threats, and maybe someone who's going to come over and attack you, but you're about to meet something that is from a different planet in terms of the threat that it poses to you. And when the Roman army gets there, they are going to take you over, they are going to enslave you. You will never have freedom again for the rest of your existence. Most likely, all your women are going to get raped right in front of your eyes, and you're just going to have to sit there and take it, and they're going to have to suffer the pain of that for the rest of their lives as you remember seeing that for the rest of your life. This is going to be your life going forward from the moment you hear those footsteps of the Roman army coming. Today, in the information age, if you're going to go to war like that and you're going to go and try to enslave and take over 8 billion people around the planet, this is how you do it. You say, I want to get this little box that locks them into me and my ecosystem. I want them to have this little box here. I want them to have this little box here. I want them to have this big box here. And I want them to have that big TV on the wall, which are all tied together, and they all have microphones that listen to what you say, and they all have cameras that watch what you do in the privacy of your own home. Remember, privacy policy allows them to invade your privacy, you see? Or didn't you read the terms that you agreed to? Perhaps you should do this. This is what Google's doing, folks. Now, Apple's doing it itself in its own way. So it's like if you had, you know, when the Roman Empire, well, like with Greece and Persia, that's something I'm a little more familiar with, right? So when you had Darius and Alexander the Great, and these are the two big world empires of the time going at it, and one of them's going to win, maybe, or they might end up having to coexist. That's where we're at today with Google and Apple. But the thing is, they don't have your best interest in mind. Just like any empire, their goal is to turn you into a source of income, a source of power for them. You as an individual do not matter one bit. What happens to you doesn't matter. You could die. You could suffer. When you use this tablet that has all this login information and privacy policies, and you're absolutely tied to Google's ecosystem here and you can't get out of it, that's why that's happening, folks. Now here's the question. Why is Walmart selling a tablet for $49? A product like that has research and development costs. There's engineers and all kinds of administrators in a big office building somewhere who designed this tablet. And they had to go through approvals and stamps, and they had to have meetings and all this. Okay, then it goes to development, and they build a prototype, and the engineers build, and they have to go out and get things tooled. They have to get the little framing pieces tooled. They have to go get the microprocessor made, custom made. All the pieces in there, all those circuit boards with those lines and everything. They have to build a manufacturing floor with the soldering capabilities and all this. Okay, they have to test it out. They have to go through a testing phase. They have to as they revise it and all that, and they decide on what the final product will be, then they have to get a supply chain set up. And they have to get the supplies, they have to build a manufacturing floor to mass produce these things, and they have to pay those people. Now granted, in China, they're paying them about 10 cents a day, which is where we're headed now, thanks to, in part, the great state of Minnesota, who elected someone who supports that to be in the White House, but that's a whole nother story. They have to, after they build them, they have to package them. So they have another department with packaging engineers who decide how to build the packaging so that it can ship safely without breaking, and use the minimum amount of packaging that still provides, you know, protection and things like that. So you've got all this going on. Then they have to ship it. They have to ship it overseas, halfway around the world on a boat. It has to go through customs where they have to pay something. And then it ends up in, say, you know, the coast over in California or in New York or Florida or something. And then it has to be driven on trucks to all the Walmarts in the United States of America. And you're telling me they're selling that thing for $49? And it's an electronic device. Folks, if you can't figure out, this is why I talk about the law of supply and demand so often on this channel. That tablet, they're not making money off of this. $49, are you crazy? There's a reason why they are willing to get this tablet into your hands for $49. You know, in marketing, you might call it a loss leader or something. You know, we're basically going to give something away to get you in the door, and then we're going to sell you the big stuff. You see that all the time on, you know, Black Friday and things like that. You know, come in and get this widget for free. And hey, while you're here, we've got these widgets that cost 20 times as much, but they're on sale, so you got to get one. Okay, what they're trying to do, they're trying to get you into Google's ecosystem. They're trying to lock you in. This is the equivalent of like when you're that Germanic tribe and you hear the footsteps. You've got spies who come in before the army arrives, before you even see the army. You just hear something in the distance that you don't know what it is. And these people start coming into your village and they start describing what they're seeing. And they say, oh, You know, you hear that noise out there? That's this group. It's called Rome. It's a country over there. They're amazing people. They're going to teach you how to make 10 times as much food more quickly. It's going to taste really good. They're going to show you how to solve all your problems. You know, just like today, these whack jobs are saying the UFOs, the aliens, are going to come down and tell us how to do everything right all of a sudden. Because, you know, they do everything right. Sure they do. Even though they supposedly fall under the same evolution that we did. But that's a whole other story, isn't it? These people come into those tribes and they say, oh yeah, that Roman Empire that's coming, they're great, you're going to love them, they're here to help you, they're here to save you. Of course, it's too late once you realize what they're really there for. That's what Walmart's doing here for Google. They're getting you into their ecosystem. And once you start doing all your stuff, everything, every move you make, every word you speak with these microphones, everything you do with these cameras, at least potentially. I'm not saying the camera's on all the time. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that this is watching you or that the microphone is on all the time. But when you look at the permission settings on these things, it's pretty obvious that the potential is there and that they have covered their butt legally to allow themselves to do that if they want to. So this little tablet is a terrifying device. Can you imagine if the Roman Empire had a device and they could go and they could somehow get every member of that tribe to carry around a little device that records every word they say and videotapes everything they're doing? The Roman Empire would know everything about this group before they got there. That group wouldn't have a chance in the universe of ever defeating the Roman Empire. Because the Roman Empire would have total information awareness, and the tribe would be completely deluded. They not only have no information, accurate information about the Roman Empire, but they're completely deluded and deceived in what they do think they know. That's the way customers of these tablets are. And most people just blow it off and, oh, you're just blah, 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 blah. You know, it's like that kind of irresponsibility is what has caused so much death and destruction and pain and suffering throughout all of human history. Those people who do that, who just sit there and say, oh, you're just a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, those are the people who have brought our species down. Those are the people who turn in Anne Frank and her family to the Nazis while they're hiding successfully up until that point. Those are the people who do that. They're bad, rotten, awful people. Walmart is selling this product for $49 so that even the poorest of the poor, of the most powerless person in the world, can get some government welfare or a stimulus check and spend $49 to get this tablet, which now locks them into Google's ecosystem. And from then on, everything they do, Google knows about. I wish I could talk more about this. It's so important. But remember, it was about, 25 years ago, after I got out of college, first thing I did was write a book. Because one reason I despised graduate school, it was a complete scam. It was a scam in every possible way. But one of the biggest ones was that they were trying to get us to do our research. You know, if you want to get a PhD, here's what you can do. The options they gave you were designing this kind of a world. You know, specifically in my case, it was for Motorola and some, Sprint and others. I wasn't going to do that because I saw what they were doing. They were building the infrastructure for not just invading, but stealing and just taking total control over other people's privacy. And your power comes from your privacy in large part. Without your privacy, you're powerless. Somebody wants you to be powerless. That's why they're doing this. I can't hack an Android device the way I can hack a Windows device. I know how to deal with a Windows device. I have for decades. Android's a whole nother story. This is completely built, it's hidden. You don't know what Android's doing, and that's what's so scary about it. Now, having said that, what I did was, again, I have to have something like that because I live in this car. If I didn't live in the car, I would care less about that. Although I might get one just to run those apps, but that would be an expense I'm willing to pay just to run a guitar training app or something. But in this case, I needed something, again, to take the burden off of this. So the first thing I did was I went into Chrome. After I got this all set up, I went into Chrome, I downloaded the DuckDuckGo browser, which is the closest thing to a privacy browser you're going to find. But then again, look at the world we live in, folks. For all we know, DuckDuckGo themselves was set up by the CIA or the NSA. Or it might be, if you follow the chain, you know, the front group that owns the front group that owns the front group that owns the front group, all the way around the world through different countries. You might be Google, who owns DuckDuckGo. And once again, they're stealing all your information, and they're watching every move you make, even as they say, we are the privacy browser. There's no way to know, and that's the problem today. You can't know. There is no such thing as privacy anymore, and that's the most dangerous thing that humans have ever been exposed to. Far more than a silly little disease. Losing your privacy like that in an information technology age, it's the definition of human slavery. So you don't know who owns these things. What if DuckDuckGo gets bought out by Google or Apple at some point, even if they are legitimately independent? I don't know. All Google has to do is create a front organization, which creates its own front organization, which creates its own front organization, and you've got all these subsidiaries and all this business nonsense, and then one of them buys DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo says, we're not selling ourselves to Google. We would never do that in a million years. Google is evil. But we'll sell it to this little group over here. As soon as the papers are signed and the ink dries, all of a sudden, oh wow, what do you know? They're owned by them, who's owned by them, who's owned by them, who's owned by Google. Google just bought DuckDuckGo, and DuckDuckGo had no idea because they didn't technically sell it to Google. See, these are the shenanigans that go on with these people. And you got to ask the question, why are they engaged in these shenanigans? It's because this is how you take over the world. This is how you take over governments. Google is as much in control of our government as every representative and senator combined. And if you don't know that, you got problems. Because Google is the new Roman Empire. And they are here to rape and pillage and hurt people and enslave people. That's what Google does. I'm a homeless person who, in these kinds of conditions, have created more than 200 videos over 5 years from inside this car. Videos that say something really important. I'm not sitting here watching a video game going, oh my god, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, he hit him in the face. I'm not doing that and getting 25 million views like the people that YouTube promotes. I'm here talking about stuff that actually matters. Stuff that gives you human dignity. Stuff that can help save your life. Stuff that matters in the real world. And what do I get? 10 to 50 views. Well, one of the big reasons for that is because YouTube shadow bans me. You see, they go through, when you upload a video, they know what you're saying, they can translate it into text, they can analyze the text, and this is all automatic. It's not like there's some person sitting there watching this, but it's automated. And I talk about topics they don't want you to know about, so I'm shadow banned. If I had not been shadow banned, a channel like this would have had probably at least 100,000 viewers by now after 5 years, easily. There's enough people in this big, huge world of ours that are interested in the topics I talk about and the way that I talk about it, that I would have a following that big. And instead, what do I have? 150 subscribers, and my videos get 10 to 50 views perhaps. That's called shadow banning. It's the same kind of thing that might take, say, the President of the United States, a duly elected president, the leader of the free world, and ban them from being able to communicate with their own constituents, which is not only their right, but it is their responsibility to communicate with their constituents, and it is their responsibility to do so in the manner that they see fit. In other words, they should use their personality, their words, they should say it the way they want to say it. If you want to be a politically correct, stiff as a board, fake and fraud, a Nancy Pelosi type, a Joe Biden type, it's your right to do that if you want to be a fake and a fraud. If you want to be sincere and legitimate, if you want to be what you are, like a Donald Trump, and you want to speak using the language that you feel is the best to use, then you do that. That is your obligation. But the big tech companies censored the President of the United States. They did not allow that individual to speak to the people. Why wouldn't they want him to speak to the people? It isn't because of what he's saying. They don't have any right to decide this is right to say, this is wrong to say. It's because they were cutting off the sheer power of the most powerful person in the world, the leader of the free world. When that person cannot communicate to the very people whom he is obligated to serve, when he can't communicate with them and tell them what he's doing and why, he can't let them know what's on his mind anymore. So that the only thing you hear about what is on his mind comes from the propaganda bullhorn of the people who oppose him. Folks, that is big tech literally conducting a coup against the United States of America. And that's the president. If they're going to do that against the president of the United States, what are they going to do against you? You are just a sheep to the slaughter. You're a steak on the table. You're nothing but another meal for these people. You're disposable fodder. And if you're going to lock yourself into Apple or Google with these little handheld devices, these little phones and idiot boxes, if you're going to tie yourself in that tight to this stuff and you just blow it off, and anyone who comes along and says what I say, and you say to you, well, that's a bunch of tinfoil hat conspiracy stuff, you just worry about everything. If that's the way you're going to be, you are the problem. You are the reason that humanity is being dehumanized down to the level of where we're just pointless existences. Unless you think the purpose of existence is to be brought into a world that's this beautiful and magnificent, and to never pay any attention to it throughout your entire life, and to just stare at a little box instead, while other people are controlling you through that box. And the whole universe out there, all this beautiful gorgeousness and exciting, adventurous, things that you could explore throughout your life, you're just sitting there staring at a box and texting your friends instead, or friends many of whom you'll never meet in your entire life in person. Folks, yes, this is a review of a tablet, but you've got to understand what that tablet is. And as you watch these reviews, when you're shopping for a tablet, as you go and you watch these people who have 1 million views, and they have a well-funded channel, and they have all these tools, and they can do benchmarks of the operating systems, and they show you, well, see, you got a score of 62 on this one, but the ONN tablet's only 59, it's a no-brainer which one to buy. They're misleading you as well. They're trying to make you think that the technical specs of these tablets is what's important. I'm here to tell you it's what's inside that tablet that is important. If you have to get a tablet, kind of like I do now, not have to, but I mean if it really truly benefits you to get one, you've got to protect yourself. It's exceedingly important that you do it. If you don't, you are a steak on the table. It's just a question of when someone's going to come and sit down at that table and start consuming you, throwing away the remains, and eventually excreting what used to be you into a hole in the ground. The internet is an incredibly dangerous place. Incredibly. It's one of the most dangerous environments that has ever existed on this planet. And it was created for that purpose, to be that much of a means of taking over other people. You don't need a Roman Empire anymore. The leaders of the Roman Empire, the Caesars and such, they had to pay all of those soldiers. They had to have the whole entourage and, all the support, the supply chain, often their families. You had to have all this massive group of people walking across the earth to go conquer here and there so that they could pillage and steal what other people had. That's how they supported themselves. Well, Google doesn't have to do that. Google can sit in an air-conditioned office and they can wreak the same kind of havoc that the Roman Empire could, but they don't need anything. All they have to do is electronically manipulate the minds of really stupid and thoughtless people who were into, oh my gosh, it's the computer age, transhumanism is going to save us all. And these people who don't have the foggiest idea what's going on. They're called useful idiots. Just like in the Roman days, those people who went out in the front lines of an army with a little sword and a shield, and they've got 20,000 people in front of them who want to kill them, it ain't the smartest move in the world if you love your family and you want to go back and see them later today. Well, if you want to prosper in this world and have your family prosper, getting too tied up in these electronic devices is the easiest way to ensure that that does not happen. LinkedIn. All these places that ask you to provide all your information. Facebook. The stuff is all tied together in the background. It's all collated and filed, and algorithms run on it to determine things about you that can be used against you. And you might think I'm just a nobody, who cares? Why would anyone, I don't do anything wrong. You don't have to do anything wrong. That's the whole point. You think those people in the tribes did something wrong and that's why the Roman Empire came over and enslaved them and raped their daughters? Do you think that's why? Because they had done something wrong? No, it's because they existed. Because they are a resource for the Roman army. The Roman army can turn them into slave labor. They can turn them into food if they wanted to go cannibal. They are taking other human beings and saying, you are a resource for my existence now. Just like apples and oranges and dirt and soil and air and water. You, as a human being, your dignity is gone. You are now nothing more than a resource for me. That's what the Caesars would say when the Roman Empire went out and took over these tribes. That is what Google is saying today, and YouTube, and Apple. You are nothing more than a resource that they can chew on and consume and use, and then spit out and discard whenever they don't need you anymore. It has nothing to do with whether you're doing anything right or wrong when they're looking at your personal information. The point is that information allows them to do that to you. And if you don't appreciate the danger there, you kind of deserve what you're going to get. But what you're going to get is really, really bad. After I installed the DuckDuckGo browser, I went in and I disabled Chrome immediately, for whatever it's worth. Again, it probably doesn't matter in this thing. It's so run by Google that it's probably still running anyway. I disabled every Walmart app, all that bloatware. Who cares? I didn't buy a tablet so I could have quick access to Sam's Club. Give me a break. I disabled every Google app that I could safely. Now, obviously, you can't disable the Google Play Store because that's how you get the apps that you run on the thing. See, you're locked in. Whenever you're locked into something like that without alternatives, you got a problem. That's a dictatorship. You no longer have an alternative. I can't choose this one over that one because that one's gotten nasty. You're just stuck with whatever this is. And if it gets nasty or if it goes all the way into pure evil, you're stuck. It's a Google ecosystem. That's why they sell you this thing for $49. Something that probably costs them $250 to make. They don't mind losing the money. They're going to more than make up for it later as they enslave you and as they take your money by other means. Make sure you go in and set the permissions on this thing. You have to go in and set the permissions for each of the apps. Don't let them have access to anything. I turned all the permissions off, and I would let the app complain about it later, and then I could analyze whether or not I should let it have access to my my files or my whatever. But shut everything down that you can. I then installed a program called CCleaner, which wasn't as impressive at all in the Android version as it is on my PC. I run CCleaner all the time on my PC. Almost every time I open and close anything, I run CCleaner afterwards. It just cleans out a lot of that garbage, stops a lot of the tracking and stuff. However, as I did all this and I got the tablet set up, I quickly realized the thing's just physically too small. I can't see it. When you get out here, like I've got the sun rising in my eyes, I can't see the screen even when I turn it up as bright. It's just too small. I've been stuck in this car for 6 years, breathing all these fumes. It's destroyed my singing voice. It's frankly destroyed my speaking voice. And it's destroyed a lot of my body, including my eyesight, and just age. You know, I'm not getting at the age too. So the 8-inch wasn't going to work. I had to return this and get the 10-inch version. The question is, if you're going to take a phone or a tablet or something that you've been using and you want to return it or sell it to another person or give it away to someone else, how do you get your information off of there first? Because if you don't, then the other person who gets your device can just go in there and bam. In this case, since you can't log out of Google, anybody at Walmart can just take the device that I returned, turn it on, and they're already logged into my Google account. That's not a good thing, folks. See, that's the problem when they don't give you freedom and options, like the option to log out. They're locking you in. It's equivalent to being forced at gunpoint. Now, in these Android tablets, they offer you the opportunity through the settings to, quote, delete your Google account. Well, duh, folks, you're not deleting your account. If you push that button and it does what it says it does, you go to another computer, you can still log into your Google account. You're not deleting it. It's kind of sort of the equivalent of deleting the Google login from this tablet. But that isn't enough. Again, I'm trying hard not to get into the technical stuff, but I understand how computers work and hard drives and file management and all this. As you use the tablet, it is storing files all over the place, and it could potentially store things like passwords and personal information. When you delete a file on a computer, if you imagine that just imagine a bunch of lines of zeros and ones, because that's what the computer sees, binary numbers. 0101100111100011. That's your file, okay? Now, when you delete a file, it doesn't go in and just change it all to 0. It doesn't do that. What it does is it goes up to the first several of these, maybe the first byte, and it changes it to a flag that your operating system recognizes. The flag says this file is deleted. But all the information's still there as it was before. The only thing that's changed is this little indicator at the beginning. Well, anybody who wants to undelete your file, that's a simple case. You just go through and you have a program written that goes and looks for that flag, and then it reads the rest of the file and it presents it right there for you. So it's anything but deleted. You need something that's going to go through and wipe out all those zeros and ones in the file. Change them, mutilate them, just completely alter it so that nobody could ever again retrieve that file with your password again, for example. So I downloaded an app called Shred-it, and I downloaded a second wiper. I can't remember the name of it at this point. But the reason I got two of them is because they're going to use different algorithms slightly, and that helps to cover in case one of them misses something. So then, after I did that, then I did the delete on my Google account on my tablet. Now again, whatever that means, I can't trust Google. Google lies. So Google shadow bans homeless people. I mean, come on, folks. How much lower class can you possibly get than taking someone who's stuck living in a car, absolute third world misery in the most prosperous nation in the world, and you're going to do everything you can algorithmically to make sure that that individual will never be heard by anybody as they make all these videos? That's worse than stealing candy from a baby. That's going up and taking the candy from the baby and then just slapping the baby. This is sleaze on a scale that we just normally didn't see before. This is a homeless person who they're shadow banning. If they're going to do that, I can't trust them when they say their account's deleted. These are not trustworthy people, folks. So I deleted the Google account, then I ran Shred-it. What Shred-it did was to wipe all of the free space. So presumably where the Google account previously was. When I deleted the Google account, all those files got the little flag changed. Well, Shred-it is supposed to go in there and change all of the actual files to zeros or something. Then after that, I deleted Shred-it, and then I ran the other one, the other wiper. So that went through and wiped everything again, and including the space that was previously occupied by the Shred-it program. And then I deleted that thing. Then I went into next I went and I did a factory reset. Now a factory reset really doesn't do anything in particular. It just kind of puts all the settings back to where they were when you bought it. But I did that, and then I went in and I changed all the settings to junk. I denied every permission. I just set everything to absolute chaos. And the reason I did that is because if some goon over at Walmart or where have you does take this tablet and they open it up and they think, I wonder if I can get into the previous owner's accounts, they're just going to encounter nothing but a fiasco. They're not going to be able to get anything done. All the settings are chaotic and don't make sense. It's going to be unusable. That makes it psychologically, the odds are better that they're going to say, alright, I'm not going to try to hack into this one. I'll hack into this person's device instead, because they didn't take all these precautions. This is a waste of time. And they'll just run the program to refresh it with the, copy over everything with the new Android operating system so they can call it a refurbished one and sell it. So that's why I did all that. And you should do it as well. If you ever sell or give away a device or even throw away a phone or a tablet or a computer and you don't do all that to it beforehand, folks, you have no idea where your information could end up. All the stuff you have on your computer, all your passwords. If you're like me, I keep a dream log. You know, I mean, the dreams that I have, I keep a log of them. And, you know, I mean, granted, I mean, they're just dreams, but, you know, what about your diary? Things like that. You know, your family photos and things like that. This stuff shouldn't be in anyone else's hands. And you got to make sure you delete it. Anyway, that's what I did as far as deleting it. And then I took this back to Walmart to exchange it for the 10-inch version of the exact same thing. All right. And I've got to open the door a bit here. It's just getting too hot and muggy. I was trying to keep the sound down, but obviously it's not very quiet out here. And I'm so sorry that this is putting me in shade as well. Alright, so continuing on here, I went and I traded this for exchanged it for the 10-inch version. Now, when I got the 10-inch version, I also got the folio for the 10-inch. This is the ONN folio, right? This is made by the same company for 10-inch tablets. When I took it out to the car, the first thing I did was try to mount this thing into the folio to make sure it fit and to protect it. And it didn't even fit. What it is these ONN tablets are thicker by a long shot than like the Samsung ones. The Samsung ones are very thin. The ONN ones are quite a bit thicker. So when you have these, I'll show you here. I got a different folio, but when you have these clips that lock it in, these elastic clips, they weren't thick enough. They weren't thick enough to go around this tablet. And that's the one from ONN, so that's kind of weird. So I had to take the folio back almost immediately. As soon as I got to the car, I figured that out, and I went right back in and returned the folio. So I didn't have anything to protect the tablet. In terms of that problem, I went to Office Depot first, and didn't really find anything that worked. Then I went to Best Buy, and at Best Buy I got this Insignia generic all-purpose tablet folio, and it works quite well. The only place it really doesn't work with this ONN tablet is the if you can see there, the headphone jack is covered a little bit by this clip, so I have to kind of twist the clip out of the way to plug in the headphone jack. What I'll probably do is get a small just extension that has the input and output for headphones. I'll plug it in and I can leave it in there, and then it'll be hanging off to the side. He is a nice guy. This guy's a beautiful man. And that will allow me to plug in the the headphones into that extension, so I can kind of leave it in there. Anyway, everything else though fits real well. These clips do not interfere with anything on this ONN tablet. A little bit on the volume up, but you can still touch it. And in fact, it might even be better, because if you put your fingers right next to this clip, you're on the volume up. So, this works pretty well. But this thing was like $32. I mean, this thing costs almost as much as the entire 7-inch tablet. Best Buy is not known for low prices, but that's all right. I'm willing to pay for something as long as I get what I'm paying for, and as long as I'm not paying for a token gesture like a $49 tablet, which they're basically losing money on because they want you to have it in your possession to lock you in to where they will get far more than their money from you later. What was that line? There's a Christian song. What was that line? Won't charge you at the door, but he sure knows how to get your mama money. Yeah, one of my favorite lines in music. Won't charge you at the door, but he sure knows how to get your mama money. Yeah, that's it, folks. First one's free, kids. First one's free. That's why the tablet costs $49. You're not buying a useful tool. You're buying something that someone wants you to have for a reason. They want you to have it in your possession and in your home for a reason. What is that reason? That's what you need to know. So now that I had the 10-inch tablet, I had to reinstall all that stuff. I had to go and do everything over again. Install DuckDuckGo, disable Chrome, all those things to the CCleaner, and then I had to get the applications that I wanted. So, and basically at the end of all that, I was back to where I started. I just had a 2-inch bigger screen. But the fact is, it really did matter. I mean, it really made it a lot easier to work with, for me to see and everything. Still, when you get the sun in your eyes like that, in this car, for most of the day, it is bright, and I can't view the computer, I can't view that. It's very, very difficult. I mean, look at the shadows it's putting on my face here. This is the kind of harsh lighting, and not to mention the heat. I mean, I'm starting to sweat here. In fact, I better turn the fan on. And it's only what? It's 7 in the morning, folks. It's 7 in the morning, and I'm already starting to sweat and feel miserable, and it's just going to get worse. That's the pleasure of living in a car in the great state of Minnesota, where they don't care about homeless people one itty bitty teeny weeny bit. So there's just a few other things I want to talk about here. One of them is the SD card. Very, very important. You know, these tablets have an SD card input. When you go to format it, you can format it in basically one of two ways. Either as an extension of the memory of the device itself. So if I have a 32 gigabyte tablet here, if I choose that option, then when I put in a 64 gigabyte SD card, if I format it as an extension, then it will be as if this thing had 96 gigabytes built into it. And that's it. But the other way you can do the SD card is basically as a portable drive, a portable, transfer jump drive. If you do that, then your device still has 32 gigabytes, but you have like extra hard drive space. And you can easily take it to another, like this computer, and I can download. And that's what I do. I go here and I get all those files I want to look at on a smaller device, and I transfer them there and I plug it in here, and then they're accessible. But I'm still limited to the smaller amount of system memory in here, if that makes sense. So those are the two ways you can format it. Now, here's what happened though. When I finally went to do that, to set up this SD card, the question became, how do I format it? Because when I put it in this, I put the card in here and it didn't read it. It said corrupted. And then I went in and I tried to format it in here, and it would take quite a while, and then it would just crash and burn with some kind of like Java looking error message that blinked up for a second and disappeared. And I spent like a day, or maybe more than a day, trying to figure out why this was, because I had other micro SD cards, and everyone I tried had that problem. So it started to look like, well, either there's an issue with the file system I'm choosing, or there's something physically wrong with this 10-inch, which would be great, because then I get to go exchange it and start all over. So I went to this computer and I would reformat that card. I reformatted it as FAT32. I reformatted it as exFAT. I didn't go to NTFS file system. And by the way, folks, what that means is this. When the computers first kind of started and you first started getting Windows, they had a file system called FAT32. That stands for File Allocation Table, 32-bit. And what it basically is it's a standard, a protocol, a standard for file management. So any software or any computer, Windows computer, that adheres to this FAT32 standard would be able to read files, even if you go from a Dell computer to a Gateway 2000 computer to a Hewlett-Packard computer, right? And it worked really well for many years, but there were limitations, the biggest one being that you couldn't access files that were more than 4 gigabytes, which is about the size of a DVD. So around the time of Windows NT, which was about as successful as OS2, inside joke for computer people there, when it came around the time for NT, they came up with a new file system. They called it NTFS, NT file system. That got past the limitations there. So it was a much more sleek and streamlined file management system. Ever since then, for what it's worth, your computers are using NTFS. It's made for 64-bit computers. You can access much bigger files, more files, everything's bigger and better. But when you're dealing with these small devices that you plug in, you know, little chips and things, often you'll format them to FAT32 just for compatibility, because you don't know whether the device you're going to plug it into can read NTFS. Well, here's what happened though. Windows 10 stiffs you with exFAT, EXFAT. Well, what that is basically the old FAT32 file system, but they kind of did a few tweaks to it so it could access files greater than 4 gigabytes, but it doesn't have all the features of NTFS. In other words, just like Microsoft so often does, it's a piece of duct tape, and it's ugly. It's just ugly. And they took away FAT32, so you couldn't format it to FAT32. You can only format it to this new exFAT. Well, I don't know if this tablet can read exFAT. I mean, this is something relatively new with Microsoft. And there was no documentation to tell you, because again, the whole purpose of this tablet is to suck you into, lock you in chains into Google's ecosystem. So they're not concerned whether you know about the file systems the chip uses. That has nothing to do with it. All they want you to do is log in and give your Google account. That's all they want. Once you've done that, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. The thing now records everything you do. It tracks everything you do. It is now making Google money in ways that you don't even understand. So they couldn't care less if you understand how it works or if you're able to get it functioning properly. So they don't bother telling you what file system this uses. Well, I reformatted this chip using, I went into low level. I mean, I have ways, again, with a PC, I know what I'm doing. I could get around it. I found, you know, I am able to format it as FAT32, and I did. That didn't work. I used disk management. I deleted the partitions. I just did everything imaginable that you should not have to do to just plug a chip into a tablet. And no matter what I did, this thing kept giving me that error and saying it was corrupted. So at some point I had to admit defeat and say, well, it looks to me like the reader itself is physically bad, and that means I have to take this one back. So I have to go through all this process now of deleting everything and covering, you know, with the shred it and all that, covering up my files and do it again. And at the very last moment though, I figured something out. And this is so funny how you can know a lot about computers, or know a lot about something, and still not understand anything. Here's the cover. They have a cover on this thing, if you can see it, for the SD card. Now the only way to open that cover is to, I can't do it with my fingernails. I have to keep my fingernails trimmed right so I can play guitar. Well, I have to go in with this knife. Of course, when I do that, that means these keys are banging against the glass. So you have to be very, very careful. A very poor design, by the way, whoever made this ONN tablet. To have something that requires you to have to bring some kind of a tool in to open this that could bang against the glass, very bad design. Once you get it open like that though, you know, this plastic thing comes out. Well, here's the deal. When you put the, let me see. When you put the chip in, this is what you get. Hopefully you can see that. You see the SD card in there? So when you put it in there and you push down and it goes as far as it will, that's what you get. When you put this little clipping top on it and you push that down, that's what pushes the SD card in, so it's in place. Well, it turns out that that is not the case. Now, I was pushing it as hard as I could with my fingers, but that's as far in as it went. Usually with a micro SD card, you get a satisfying click and you feel the spring action and it goes ka-ching and it locks. This wasn't doing that. This looked like the old school type where this cover is what was pushing and locking the SD card into place. Well, it turns out that the SD card actually goes in further than this. It's just there isn't enough room. My finger won't actually push it in that far. So you have to take another tool, like a key or something, without scratching or breaking your glass, and you have to take this thing and you have to push it in further until you get that satisfying click. And this is how much effort it takes to do that. There we go. So now you see the card is in much, much deeper. It's locked in the way it should have been in the first place. And then you can put this cover over it. Well, as soon as I did that, immediately the SD card just worked like a charm no matter what I did. So that's all I needed to do in the first place, was just push this thing in further, but your finger won't do it. And again, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, the last thing I want to do is take a piece of metal and go jamming it into internal holes in my laptop or my tablet or something, but apparently that's what you have to do. But having said that, once you've done it and you just push this cover on, which is just protective apparently, you're good to go, and it works fine. So if you're struggling with your SD card not working on an ONN tablet, that might be the reason right there. Make sure it is in fact pushed all the way in, but be careful that if you use something like a knife or something sharp to push it down, make sure you don't damage anything while you're doing it. That's why when I push it down, I use something more blunt like a key that has more thickness to it. And I dropped my mouse again. Okay, so other than that, and the other thing is when you click it again so that you can take out the SD card, you can't grab it with your fingers. It's really, really difficult. You need some kind of tweezers to do it. Again, very poor design for someone who's going to use it for portable, because I have to take that chip in and out almost on a daily basis. And I have to go through all that rigmarole to do it, whereas like with my portable handheld audio recorder, all I do is I flip open the cover, I just give it a little push, and it comes right out, and you're good to go. So that's pretty poor design. Everything else on that tablet, though, seems pretty good physically. The volume controls. The one thing with the volume control I don't like is that it changes in discrete settings. So, in other words, when you hit the volume control, you can't just push it and it smoothly goes up and down. What it does is if you push it and hold it, it'll jump from here to there to there to there to there. And in fact, right about here, it gives you this message, it interrupts you and says, are you sure you want to turn the volume up beyond the recommended level? It's like, yeah, I'm an adult. Okay, it's like when you go to those elevators and they take 45 seconds just to close the door and finally start moving, because it treats you like everyone on the elevator is a 5-year-old kid who's dumb enough to stick their foot in the door or something. It's like, maybe I'm an adult, maybe I can figure out how to do this stuff. You don't need to tell me not to turn the volume up too loud. It's going to hurt my ears. I know what happened to Pete Townsend. I understand these things. So to have that interruption every single time is really annoying. If it just did it the first time, fine. You're letting people know that it might be a little loud, it might damage your hearing. But every single time, seriously, that I start turning the volume up, I have to get interrupted with that message. Again, not the worst thing in the world, but a nuisance. The bigger problem, though, for me is that it changes in discrete, settings. So I can't, it's not an analog. In other words, it's digital volume. It's not analog. I can't just smoothly move it up and down, because what if I want the ideal volume is in between here and there, the two settings that allows you to choose. So I found that a bit annoying. Again, it's not a deal breaker, but kind of annoying. For someone who works with audio as much as I do, I like to have, exact settings on anything audio oriented. But other than that, again, it seems to work just fine. It's reasonably fast. Again, if you got the octa-core version of that, I don't think it's going to run any faster noticeably. It could, in fact, run slower when you know what those cores are doing. One thing I do wish it had, I don't understand why they don't have 2 SD card slots. Now, of course, that would bring the price up more, but 2 SD card slots allows you to put in 1 SD card to become new system memory, so that you have like 96 gigabytes of system memory. But then you can also use another card as a portable drive like I use it. Then you have the best of both worlds. You can turn that little tablet into a real powerhouse that way. So, maybe the more expensive tablets do have that. I don't know. Again, it would and it should raise the price if they did add that feature here. I'm not running a lot of apps, so it doesn't really bother me. The most I'll run in terms of games are probably like chess or solitaire or something. I have very little internet access, as I talk about on here. I live in a car, so it's mainly for offline viewing, and it's basically a media player for me. Although that one guitar app is really cool. It's going to help me learn a lot of the fretboard that I don't know. Another consideration I'm not going to talk about here, but just to raise the issue, is what about radiation from these things? Just like remember when I was talking about the Somalis who keep sticking the phone in their burqas or their hijabs or whatever? Monumentally risky at the very least behavior. You are playing with very hot fire when you do that. Sticking a source of microwave radiation right next to your head isn't the smartest thing in the world to do. And the unfortunate part about that is that when you do it, it attacks your brain and it kind of makes you dumber, so that you'll even do more stupid things in the future. In other words, it's a cumulative movement towards stupidity. You don't want to chew up parts of your brain in there with radiation. Now, there's a big debate on whether cell phone radiation is dangerous and all that. I may have a video on that coming up soon. The short answer is it isn't certain one way or the other, but sometimes it's wise to err on the side of caution. It's generating radiation. It does seem to have an effect on brain tissue. Don't stick it next to your head. In fact, don't use your phones. I don't understand why people are doing this. These people who have their phones up there all the time. Very, very dangerous. Well, what about the tablet? Now, the tablet, for me, is going to be more or less sitting in my lap, where there's some other tissue that I don't really want to get radiated. All I can say there, folks, is put it in airplane mode as much as possible. Do everything you can to keep that thing at least a couple inches away from your skin. And that's why I more or less mount it to my steering wheel here. But anytime you have Wi-Fi going on or things like that, this thing's constantly pinging the towers and satellites and trying to make connections, and that means it's generating radiation. So you don't want that thing sitting on your lap. Frankly, I think if you give this to a child, I hope you won't give it to a child. I hope you won't give them a cell phone. They're children. They're still developing. Their bodies are still developing. To expose them to that kind of radiation, it isn't about me sitting here saying, oh, radiation causes cancer and all this, although it does. But I'm not sitting here saying, oh, using a cell phone causes cancer. I'm not going to do that. That's what anti-smokers do. If you smoke, then you get cancer. That's junk science. What I am saying is that just like when you're smoking, you're exposing yourself to chemicals in an unnatural way. It does have certain effects that you know about, like affects your breathing, makes you winded more quickly. So there are things that are very real there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you smoke, then you get cancer. Well, it's the same thing with these. If you use a cell phone or a tablet, I can't sit there and say, well, then you're going to get cancer. But you got to think about things too at the same time. You got to use common sense. It does generate radiation. It's non-ionizing radiation, but still it's radiation, and they haven't really studied what it does. And that's the problem. We don't really know. But the thing is, the few studies that have been done seem to indicate that this might be a whole lot more dangerous than we ever thought it was. Now, I don't know. They got to do more research, but that research isn't being done properly. So it's best to err on the side of caution. So, which brings me back to the idea of you giving one of these to your children. My recommendation is don't. Love your children. Loving your children is not giving them a cool device that's going to make them look cool with their friends. Loving your children is protecting them from something that could potentially ruin the rest of their lives. That's my recommendation. But I believe in freedom. You are their parent. You have to make the decision. And I'm not going to come along with a gun and a law and a legal system and a bunch of loony liberals who are going to tell you what to do. But I recommend that you keep these out of the hands of your children. And there's other benefits as well, because they will learn how to experience the actual world instead of staring at an idiot box all the time. And that's, if nothing else, that's a great reason not to let your children anywhere near these things. Alright, so with that, I might talk about those topics in a future video. This has gone on long enough. I don't know if you'd call this a review of the ONN tablet or not. I guess in some ways it is. But notice how the topics I talk about are very different than what these tech channels on YouTube talk about. These tech channels get 100,000 subscribers. They get 1 million views on some videos. Are they telling you all these things? Are they inspiring you to think about all of these things? Because what I talked about here were very, very, very important. Not just to the functionality of your tablet, but to your life as a free and independent, dignified human being. And what kind of a world your children are going to grow up in. That's what I'm asking you to think about, and that's why Google, through YouTube, shadow bans me so that only 50 people are going to watch this video. Which, again, is something to think about, isn't it? Kind of comes down to thinking in the end, isn't it? That's the purpose of this channel. I hope you got something out of this. If you're going to get a tablet, protect yourself, folks, and know what you're getting into. You're inviting the Roman army into your village when you get one of these tablets or one of those smartphones. Make sure you know what you're doing, because the outcome 5, 10, 20 years down the road could be something you didn't want. And by then, it will be way too late to stop it. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you'll come back for my next video. If you like this, put a like on it, right? What is it? What does everyone say? Subscribe, like, comment. Do what you want. I mean, if you want to leave a comment, please do. If you want to like the video, please do. If you want to subscribe, please do. You do what you want, not what I tell you to do. Thanks for being here, though. You take care.